Access to fresh and good food has never been more important. In our next segment, we're excited to have a live conversation with some of the most celebrated voices in the food space. We're going to be talking to a young chef, Rahanna Bisseret Martinez, forager Alexis Nikole Nelson, and chef and really food legend, Bryant Terry. Remember, you can tweet along with the program by using the hashtag Black History Continued. And please add your questions to the chat so we can grab them.
Hello, everyone. Once again, I am Charlie Brinkhurst-Cuff, and thank you so much for staying with us. This is a live panel discussion exploring another angle of the great outdoors, food, my favorite angle. Particularly today, we're going to be talking about farming, foraging, veganism, and food justice, if we have time. I'm thrilled to be joined by three esteemed panelists. Alexis Nikole Nelson, who's a creator sharing her knowledge and passion for foraging and outdoor education. She used her channel to detail how foraging is important to her culture, as well as simple tips and tricks for finding edible plants and cooking what she finds, all with a lighthearted and comedic lens. Please welcome Alexis.
Hello, and thank you so much for having me, Charlie. I'm so excited to be here.
Me too. You've been such an inspiration this pandemic year. Next up, we have Bryant Terry, who is a James Beard and NAACP Image Award-winning chef, educator, publisher, and author, renowned for his activism to create a healthy, just, and sustainable food system. His forthcoming collection of recipes, art, and stories entitled Black Food will be released by his publishing imprint, 4 Color Books and 10 Speed Press this October. Welcome, Bryant.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here.
Amazing. I cannot wait to see your book in the flesh, as we were discussing just before we went live. And last but not least, we have Rahanna Bisseret Martinez, a culinary work appears in Teen Vogue, Food and Wine, and Bryant curated Black Food book, as we just discussed, and her first cookbook, Flavorous, which is a great name, by the way. I need to ask you about that at some point. Is expected in 2023. Welcome, Rahanna.
Thank you. So excited.
Amazing. We're also joined by the esteemed Rorri Burton, who is our fantastic American Sign Language interpreter. Thank you so much, Rorri, for all your work. Everyone will have a chance to ask questions later, but now is my time. I get to ask the questions. And, I wanted to kick off tonight's event with asking the big question, I guess, and I'm going to direct it to you first, Bryant. Obviously, tonight has been all about how Black folks experience the great outdoors. And I wanted to know for you, what does the words nature is our right mean, I guess, in the context of Black food exploration specifically?
Yeah, thank you, Charlie. That's a great question. And it takes me back to a quote that I read last week in which some activist, and I can't remember who the person was, talked about both the stereotypes and the reality of many Black people having a reluctance to be in natural environments, going hiking or, being in the forest, or even this real and imagined way in which people imagine Black folks not being able to swim or having this reluctance when it comes to water. And what they said, I think, was pretty brilliant and profound. And he said that, these stereotypes, these realities say more about white violence than they do about the interest, the excitement, enthusiasm, or competency of Black people. And I think it's important to recognize that contemporary and historical white violence has robbed many Black people of the basic human right of being able to just enjoy the natural environment without the anxiety and concern of white violence. And we've seen this often with the proverbial recordings of the proverbial Karens disrupting Black folks when they're just living their best life. I think about one of the more recent prominent examples was the bird watcher, Chris Cooper, in New York City when he was in Central Park and got into this confrontation with this white woman, and she called the police and was making up all these things. things. And we've seen countless examples of that in the urban environment. But these are the same type of white violence is happening in rural spaces. I think about this place in Northern California, Nevada City. It's a small town, and it's an interesting place because there are a lot of artists from California. I think it has the highest density per capita of artists in California there, a lot of hippies. But then there are like areas where there are white separatists there. And a lot of people come from the city and go up there because there's a Yuba River and people love to get away and go up and just enjoy the natural environment. And so we have a home up there. And so we spend a lot of time up there in the summer. And I remember a couple of years ago, there was an incident where there was some drunk white men who attacked this Black family who had come up to just go hiking and camping with their family. And it was, so dramatic that one of the men had, just kind of run towards the 83-year-old grandmother and knocked her down. And it was a big deal. And it kind of, a lot of people in the community were talking about it. And I don't, it makes me anxious and makes me fearful of being outside and being at a river and just having to be on alert when this is the moment where you should be the most relaxed. This is the, doing something like enjoying, the river or going on a hike. These are the times where a lot of people talk about finding respite from the chaotic nature of the world. And so I think that just like clean air, untainted water, and nutrient-rich food, the ability to go out into the natural environment and enjoy without having our cortisol raised, without the anxiety of the potential of white violence is a human right that we should all be afforded.
Absolutely. Alexis, I could see you sort of nodding along there, especially when Bryant was describing some of those incidents of white violence. I know it's something that you've spoken a little bit about before, and even in the feature that we worked on together. What is your sort of conception of that, and how do you sort of find respite, perhaps despite that or amongst that?
Well, I think especially after the last year, 18 months that we've all had, it's become readily apparent how much being able to spend time outside is not just good for us physically, it's also good for us mentally. It's good for us emotionally. It's one of those things that I think really helps a person reset when stress levels are at an all-time high. So the fact that we as a group have been kind of systemically left out of a lot of those outdoor spaces and kind of made to feel for a lot of generations like those spaces did not belong to us as much as they belong to others. Like it's caused a gap in terms of like mental wellness, in terms of physical wellness between the Black community and the white community. And that's something that we're, like everyone in this chat right now, is actively working to break down, because part of the issue that I think has held back our parents, our grandparents, is if you don't see other people who look like you doing it. The kind of inertia that keeps you from doing it is so much greater than it would be otherwise. So for me, nature is a right is just like kind of a mantra that we have to keep repeating to ourselves, that we have to keep repeating to people younger than us so we can kind of pass this baton on to them. Because I feel like for the last couple of generations, a lot of people have been grinding to break down some of those stereotypes. And I feel like the floodgates are about to open, and we just got to keep opening them.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. And yeah, I think keeping it as a mantra is a beautiful way of capturing what I hope people take away from this panel as well. If you remember one thing, nature is our right, because it is.
Exactly.
Rahanna, I wanted to move on to speak to you more specifically about food, because food is your one true love, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I hope I'm not overstepping to say that. And I know that every time that you sort of set the table with the produce that you get from the farmers market, which is intrinsically tied to this wider conversation about outdoors, I know that you're sort of trying to tell a story. So I was wondering, we were talking just before we started about the blackberry tres leches cake that you've been making, and I've seen you posting all these amazing recipes and all sorts, working on your new cookbook. But what are the stories that you're trying to tell at the moment through your food?
Yeah, I think I'm trying to tell a variety of stories through my food. I feel like I've been thankful and grateful to have kind of diverse agricultural environment in here in Northern California. And I really just want to highlight these family farms and the agriculture, and just trying to shop in our communities and just like explore the environment and really celebrate it with my food. And I hope my book is a celebration of not just agriculture in California, but kind of all over.
Amazing. And can you tell us about the title? Why Flavorous? I'm so curious to know.
Yeah, Flavorous means pleasant taste. And I really wanted to go with that title because as soon as I heard it, I was like, that's gotta be it. I feel like so many different cultures or food are known for being super flavorful and delicious, especially Black food. And so I feel like it really kind of puts it essentially together as like, this is what you'll get with the book, and I hope it brings people in to explore and like flip the pages.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm going to be like literally cooking every single thing, telling everyone about this brand new word that I found, Flavorous. Like it's beautiful. But on the mention of farming, I think it's a good segue for us to talk a bit about Black farming. And just, I guess, they've had a struggle over the years, right, for survival and visibility. I think I read a stat that like the amount of land ownership that that Black people have had in terms of using it for farming has gone way down in the past few years. And I wanted to know from all of you, are there any sort of farmers or purveyors in the food space that you're super excited about? There's a few that I've got in mind, but I wonder if there's some new ones you guys can throw out there. Maybe I'll start with you, Bryant.
Sure. The two that come to mind immediately are two friends, and one is actually a mentee. And I'll start with him, and his name is Etef, also known as DJ Kavum. And he's a Denver-based farmer, chef, food justice activist, DJ, MC. He's just a polymath, a brilliant young guy. But he's been doing such important work in Denver in terms of really understanding like the creative ways, or I guess I should say kind of inventing and pioneering these creative ways to empower the most historically impacted communities. We talk a lot about this idea of food justice, which is addressing what we now are talking about as food apartheid. I think, over the past several decades, the term that's been in common parlance in terms of looking at communities that have very little access to healthy, fresh, affordable, and culturally appropriate food has been food deserts. And that term has been largely supplanted by a lot of food justice activists and people who are far left, social justice activists who have understand the term food apartheid more squarely helps us understand the structural barriers that prevent many communities from accessing healthy, fresh, affordable, and culturally appropriate food. And I would argue that one of the cornerstones of food justice is that the solutions are owned and driven by the people most impacted by these issues. We've seen countless examples of this kind of paternalistic approach that we often see coming from philanthropic organizations or NGOs that are working in these, struggling communities. And so often, the money that's coming in is going to like these snow-capped organizations and being paid for staff, and the money isn't actually making an impact in the community in the way that it should. And that says to me that, one, people don't recognize that the folks living in communities, they understand the problems, they understand the issues, and they have a lot of brilliant and creative solutions. But what people need are resources. They need power shifted into their hands so that they can actually own and drive these solutions. And ETEF has been important in doing that. The other person, Leah Penniman, who is a chef outside of Buffalo, her farm, the work that she's doing in her fire. I'm blanking on the name right now, but Leah Penniman is this brilliant, chef and activist who has, understood the role that these rural spaces can play in educating consumers and empowering people living in cities to actually come and gain skills that they could then bring back to their communities. But also, as we spoke about earlier, and as Alexis mentioned, giving people a space where they can actually leave the city and feel safe and feel like they see each other, see other people who look like them, and are working towards a goal for collective empowerment and self-determination.
Amazing. I think that point on resources is so crucial because as I kind of mentioned earlier, I think that's one of the things that I've certainly read about that a lot of Black farmers or Black people working in the food justice space have struggled with is sustainability or sustaining their practice through, because of resource. Alexis, how do you think that, the conversation around foraging and specifically Black people in the foraging space can play into food justice? How big a role can foraging, practically play as we kind of look for solutions to this?
Yeah, talking about practicality is always like really important when it comes to foraging. Because I'm like the last person who will tell someone, oh, the way that we are going to fix these food deserts, these food disparities, this food apartheid is definitely through everyone just eating acorns. Because like that's not the way that we're going to fix the problem. It's like a tiny puzzle piece and like a 2,000 part jigsaw puzzle that simultaneously is made up of like members of our community actually coming up with solutions and being given the ability to come up with the solutions to these problems. I think foraging is really important for a myriad of reasons. If I say it's not important, then it's like, oh, there goes my entire shtick out the window. But one of the things that I think it does for anyone who isn't planning on making it a huge portion of their diet is it opens your eyes up to a lot more food possibilities. It opens your eyes up to being more creative in the kitchen and to implementing a whole lot more leafy greens and veggies and nuts and fruits into your diet that you maybe wouldn't have thought about doing otherwise. And it doesn't hurt that some of those things you're bringing into your diet are things that you can access for free. And for a lot of us, it's like growing in our neighborhoods. Urban foraging, I think, doesn't get enough time in the limelight. Everyone thinks you have to go deep into the forest or know someone who owns a huge swath of land, and you have to have all of the mushrooming gear and the tiny knives and the field guides. When sometimes it's like, no, man, like our neighborhood is covered in lamb's quarters right now. Instead of going to the grocery store and buying that huge tub of spinach, let's go for a walk and gather some together and let that be a part of your meal instead. It's a very small piece of the food access puzzle, but I think it's an important one, and it's one that we haven't really touched on until very recently.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 100%.
And Charlie, can
yeah.
I just wanted to follow, and I agree with everything Alexis said. And I just want to say that I think that foraging is a radical act, especially given what we were discussing earlier in terms of Black folks just taking up space, in our communities, in communities where, especially when you have urban centers that are being gentrified, and then folks are looking at you like, what are you doing here? I was reading a story about this man who had been living in Fort Greene for 60 years, this Black man, and he said he had gone over to speak to one of his white neighbors, and then they were like, oh, I don't have any money. And he said, he's like, I'm just coming to introduce myself. I've lived here for 6 decades. And, one thing I had to confront early is this feeling like, well, is cooking political, or is, gathering at meals political? And I think in an industrialized food system that's largely controlled by a handful of multinational corporations, foraging, making food from scratch, gathering people around the table to cook are highly political, dare I say radical, in a food system that wants you to, buy a lot of fast food, or get all your food from a corporate run supermarket, or to stuff your face over the sink before you're going to one low pay job to the next one. So I think Alexis is right in that these are systemic problems, but I just want to emphasize that these small acts of radical resistance are, I think, equally important to things that we might imagine as like, bigger important ways that we can address these problems.
Absolutely. So much food agency has been taken from us over the last multiple centuries, but especially with this globalization and industrialization of our food systems. So anything that you can do, even if it's just growing a couple ears of corn in your backyard, growing your herbs in your little window pot like my mom always used to when I was growing up. They're all tiny radical acts. They're all little bits that you're taking agency over what goes into you and your family's bodies, and that's beautiful.
Yeah, 100%. I was just thinking back to when me and my mum used to go foraging for blackberries in a local cemetery near us, and I would just never. It was like filled with bats, and it was really creepy. And I would have never, if she hadn't taken me there, I would have never known that there could have been like a food source there. And it is definitely part of the puzzle, as you put it, Brian. Rahanna, this is my last question for you guys. I'm really sad. I could have spoken to you for hours, but we're going to move on to the audience Q&A in a sec. But I wanted to end with you. Obviously, you are the next generation. You're coming up. You've got your cookbook coming out. We're so excited to read it and continue to support you. But I mean, what do you hope to bring to the food world? I know that you've spoken in the past, like beautifully, about the importance of more Black-led and Black-run food media, for instance. What do you think you can sort of bring as a young Black person, just making your first step into the industry?
Yeah, I feel like as a young Black person, I have a bit of a responsibility to really act on what I talk about and support other people and include that in anything that I put out. And I think that a lot of people my age really look towards older people and also just other people in general to kind of guide us towards the future of sustainability and just together as a community. And I feel like I'm really excited to keep cooking with Black-owned brands, Black-owned businesses, and going to the farmers market and seek out Black farmers. And so I hope that I can continue that and in my book kind of highlight that as well, my cookbook.
Gorgeous. Thank you so much. Okay, so just a reminder to our lovely audience, please add your questions to the chat so we can see them. You can also tweet them at #BlackHistoryContinued. And I'm just gonna take a little look. So Creativity Rocks asks, speaking as a city girl, actually a senior, who has never camped out, but who loves the outside at night, I have a desire to try camping. What's the best way to ease into the outdoor experience? Has anyone got any experience with camping?
Oh, I love camping. I love camping. My suggestion, especially if you are in a city, is to find a group of like-minded people to go camping with. Here in Columbus, Ohio, we have a wonderful organization called Black Girls Camp. I'm pretty sure it's nationwide now, and you find your little cohort, and a couple times during each season, even the wintertime, for all of you folks who are braver and warmer than me, people will go out together and have these group camps. And for me, the best way to learn is by going and doing something with someone who knows better than you and has been doing it for longer. And it's great because you also get to foster some community while you're at it too. Yeah, camping is wonderful. Definitely get out there if you're even the littlest bit interested and try it and see how you feel about it.
I want to offer. Sorry, go ahead, Rahanna.
I was just going to ask if you'd ever been camping before, Rahanna.
Yeah, I love camping so much. I've been camping with my family before, and I think to really get out there and have fun is to, be prepared and look for other things in the wild. I remember one time we were camping and there was a whole fig tree. And so that was really exciting to be able to take that off the tree and eat and just have fun. And I think as long as you're with a bunch of people who you have fun with, I think it can be a really good experience.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And Bryant, sorry, go for it.
Oh, I just wanted to offer another resource. Rue Mapp, who's based here in Oakland, started an organization, Outdoor Afro, and they also have a nationwide network in the U.S. And they're doing some brilliant work in, really taking up space and providing opportunities for more seasoned, outdoor enthusiasts to connect with novices. And so I would say definitely look them up. And then there's this brilliant brother, Rashad Frazier, who's in Portland, and he has this whole project, or I guess company now, Yoshi Jenkins. And, I like what he's doing because he creates these more, I guess, I'll say in lieu of other words, fancy outdoor experiences where he's bringing people out and people are making gourmet food, and it's all Black folks. And I just think that they're doing a great work, but we need more. And if people have the initiative, I would say start small groups. Like Alexis said, find like-minded people, and let's just continue revving up this movement.
Gorgeous. Yeah, and for anyone listening in from London, we'll say, I think we've got our own iteration of Black Girls Camping, which is called Black Girls Camping Trip. And I saw some videos from this year and it looked really, really fun. And yeah, suddenly like they do it rain or shine. There's like a thing on the website that's just like, it's still happening if it's raining, guys. And I was like, okay. So Alexis, this one is specifically for you, and it's very specific, and I'm also interested to know the answer to it.
Oh gosh,
I think you'll know the answer. Do chestnuts have to drop from a tree before they're edible? Someone would like to know.
Okay, so we are late enough in the season that if you give a chestnut branch a shake and the whole husk falls out without opening, those guys are good to go. The shells on those chestnuts are definitely at least 90% of the way formed, and you should be great. At least if you're in Ohio. We are now safely out of the early nut drop stage for most of our trees, where the trees just like yeet all of the nuts that didn't form properly or have gotten eaten by bugs. Oh my gosh, Rorri, I'm so sorry that you just had to sign yeet. I apologize. So we, at least here in zone 6, we are in the clear. And I believe in zone 7, you guys start getting your nuts dropping before we do. That's a weird phrase to say. You should be good to harvest chestnuts now. That's the TLDR answer to your question.
Amazing. And also chestnuts are a really good camping snack as well.
They are.
Wrap them up in some foil.
Chestnuts roasting on an open fire.
Exactly. Yeah. The song literally says it. I don't think any of you guys, correct me if I'm wrong, are based in NYC, but Scott Megan asks, can you suggest some Black-owned farm-to-table restaurants in NYC? I don't know if anyone knows any, or in your local area, if that's more applicable. They've got their thinking faces on. Maybe we'll come back to this one. Does that make sense, guys? Yeah. Okay. Cool. So CMHOB525 says, I work for a Brooklyn school, Robert Field School, committed specifically to both equity and inclusion and nurturing children's innate connection to nature. Sounds fantastic. What advice do you have for educators? We'll start with Rahanna, because presumably you're still hear from you on what you would have liked to have seen in school around connection to nature, education. Oh, sorry, I think I cut out there. Apologies. So the question was, what advice do you have for educators around connecting children to nature?
Yeah, I think one of my biggest pieces of advice for educators who want to connect children to nature, especially to eating food, is to give options. I feel like when you're kind of told to, oh, you should make the salad and eat the whole thing, give them options of, oh, we're going to do different types of dressing or different toppings and different greens that you can choose from. And in the past, that's really worked out for me. And I had a whole group of elementary school kids, like 20, all eating like a bunch of salad because they had a salad eating competition or a salad making competition. So I think give options and make it fun.
Yeah, and if I could chime in on this one, because I went to a Montessori school that was also very outdoor education focused while I was in elementary school. Giving kids the time to like be outside and be curious about their surroundings is super important. We had a 45-minute recess. I'm going to say that had something to do with how outdoorsy I am. And they would just like let us loose on the woods. We would build forts in the trees. Actually, I think my elementary school makes you call them huts now because forts is a bit too aggressive, a choice of words, which honestly, great choice by them. And second is start teaching them about different plants young. I think we have this like really big misconception that it's not until you're kind of like an academia age that you can start learning about your surroundings, start learning about different plants. But I honestly think that teaching kids, whether it's about the plants you're finding in the kitchen in the grocery store or the plants that you're finding outside, starting them early like you would start a kid early with a language helps form those neural pathways and helps them recognize those things much more easily as they move through life. I know when I was a kid, there was like a mint plant we were all obsessed with at school. And every day we were allowed to eat one mint leaf because we didn't want to kill the plant, but we did still want to enjoy it. And we slowly got to learn all the other herbs in the garden and their similarities and their differences. And you think kids aren't retaining that, but they definitely are.
Mm-hmm. I just want to offer a quick response to that. And I think whether it's addressing, eating more healthfully or being in the natural environment, I think oftentimes, there's this whole thing where we kind of blame the victim, or we just, put a lot of emphasis on individual initiative and personal responsibility. And I think that it's important for educators as early as possible to talk about history, to talk about structural barriers that prevent people from accessing or eating good food, or that prevent people or make people anxious about being outside. Because I think we just have to have honesty in our curriculum. And I think it's dishonest and it's incomplete when you just say to someone, well, if you just try hard, if you just eat healthfully, or if you just knuckle up and pull up your bootstraps. This is a classic conservative argument. And I just think that it's important that teachers give the full picture, and then people can make the most informed, students can make the most informed decisions based on that.
Yeah. And Bryant, I was reading actually earlier today about how you teach your own children about food and nature and the outdoors. Has anything changed or been different during the pandemic time as well, when you've been spending more time at home, and how you've tried to educate them? Or I'm curious to know.
When they were doing shelter in place, I think that really pushed us to pay attention more to our garden, because in the midst of the school year with drop off, pick up, enrichment classes, sports activities, sometimes we don't pay enough attention to our gardens. But it's been great just really giving a lot of attention and giving them a lot of agency over what we're growing and how it's being grown and how we prepare it. And yeah, it's been fun having them cook more and giving us a break.
Back to the kitchen. Okay, and one last question for you from Ada Latifa, who asks, how do you overcome disappointments and failure? And I guess we can make that specifically about your work in the food space. Alexis, do you want to start?
Yeah, absolutely. I know, speaking from a foraging standpoint, there are fewer things that are more heartbreaking than taking the time to gather something, process something, go through all of the steps that you thought were necessary to make something, and then often many days later, not have it turn out the way that you want it to. But there's also something really humbling about it. I am a wallower. I'm just going to say that right now. When things like that happen to me, I'm definitely the kind of person who's just like, well, today is over. We're putting on a sad movie. I'm buying some vegan ice cream, and we are calling today a day. So I guess the way that I deal with it is by feeling that disappointment, but making the decision the next day to try again. That's the biggest thing for me. Never squish those feelings. Never try and mute those feelings. That's not healthy. Be disappointed. Be upset about the time that you feel like you lost, but don't let it keep you from trying that thing again. That is speaking directly from the 3 times it took me to try to get my acorn jelly, my Dotori muck, to set last year. I cried multiple times.
Oh, bless you. Okay, that's amazing. Maybe just to end on a more joyful note, and also because I secretly want to get a recipe out of at least one of you guys on this call. I need some tips on how to cook some stuff. Rahanna, what are you cooking at the moment? What should we be cooking in our homes at the moment that's sort of seasonal and easy and fresh and good? What can we make?
Yeah, I've been cooking a lot recently. Right now, figs are kind of at the end of their season, and they're really, really good. I'll talk about figs all day because I love them so much. And I just love to eat them with jelly on toast. And you can just cook them down with a little bit of lemon juice and sugar or some type of sweetener, maybe maple, or even dates, and make a really good preserve.
Gorgeous. Bryant, I can see you're nodding your head vigorously at that. Is any other recipes for figs in the back of your mind?
Oh my God, we just made a ginger fig jam from this 300-year-old fig tree that we have on one of our properties, and yeah, figs all day. Look, figs.
You West Coast kid and your fig trees. It's not fair.
Big up the figs.
Yeah, I love that. I've never had it with ginger before, so yeah, that's amazing. Cooking them down, doing it with ginger, I love it.
Do we have one more minute?
We're playing it close to the wire, but for you.
10 seconds. I just wanted to, because this is one of the potential questions that I know we had looked at, and I want to know from Rahanna and Alexis, who would be the person with whom you'd love to have as your companion, at a meal, just your dining date?
Oh my gosh. My answer was like not fair because I know everyone hates it when people say family members who are no longer with us. But it would 100% be my Nana, my Cape Verdean grandmother, who we lost about 10 years ago now. A lot of what I know about food was passed down directly from her. And it really is unfortunate losing a really important member of your family while you're still like kind of a snot-nosed kid. I was like in my early 20s, but still kind of a snot-nosed kid. So what I wouldn't give to be able to now, with all of the additional knowledge I've amassed, make a meal for her, and like inevitable snarky comments from her side, just feel like I could give back to her in the way that she had given to me and my parents so much during the course of her life. I would have loved to have taken her foraging too. She would have complained the entire time, but she would have loved the food that we gathered. That I know.
Yeah, I think my answer is pretty similar. I feel like as a Haitian and African American and indigenous Mexican person, I definitely want to be able to sit down with my ancestors and just talk to them about food and how it's changed over the years and certain family recipes that we had, how those ingredients have changed, and, just be able to eat really good food.
Thank you.
Oh, that's such
Bryant,
a great idea.
what about you? You can't dodge the question.
You have to answer the question now.
The late rapper MF Doom, hands down. I would love to he's my favorite rapper, but he also emphasized food a lot in his work. Like he has 5 or 6 volumes of beats that he makes, and all of the beats are named after different herbs. They're called fresh herbs, and he has a whole album called Food. So
beautiful. Thank you so much, guys, and thank you to everyone else for joining us. Stay tuned for a special presentation from Precious Okoyomon shortly.